So, what if I told you there's a book of ideas so dangerous, so absolutely revolutionary, that the government actually banned it for 30 years? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, the golden sayings of the Indian social reformer Periyar E.V. Ramasamy. And trust me, this isn't just a collection of nice quotes. It's practically a manual for a revolution of the mind, one that challenged the very foundations of society. And when I say radical, I really mean it. This book first came out in 1949, and it was banned by the government almost immediately. And get this, it wasn't until 1979, that's 30 whole years later, that the ban was finally lifted. It just begs the question, right? What ideas could possibly be so dangerous that they needed to be silenced for an entire generation? Well, the answer really starts with this one single powerful idea. This quote right here is the master key to his entire philosophy. See, he's not telling you what to think, he's demanding that you think for yourself. Everything else we're about to talk about is built on this foundation: rational, independent thought above everything else. So, using that lens of rationalism, Perrier turned his focus to what he saw as a deep, deep sickness in his society. And he wasn't interested in just treating the symptoms. No way. He was determined to make a radical diagnosis of the root causes of injustice. A huge part of his movement was a direct response to the dehumanizing caste system. He pointed right to religious dogmas that defined the vast majority of people, the working population, with this incredibly insulting term. For Periyar, this wasn't just an offensive word. It was a fundamental tool of social and economic control. And this is Periyar's unflinching logic in action. If any system is degrading people, it has to be dismantled. Period. He drew a straight line from social inequality right back to religious structures. So if a god, a religion, or a sacred text is the source of that degradation, his solution was simple and absolute: destroy it. And he took this critique even further. He argued the caste system wasn't some spiritual hierarchy at all, but that it was a purely economic one, designed for exploitation. He just lays it out so plainly. The high caste is the one who doesn't work and lives off the labor of others. The low caste is the one doing all the work for little to no reward. I mean, it is just a scathing indictment of an entire social and economic order. Okay, so after diagnosing the disease, what was Periyar's cure? He didn't propose a new religion or a new set of rules. He proposed a completely new way of thinking and a new way of living. And it was all centered on two powerful ideas: rationalism and self-respect. He actually founded the self-respect movement to put these ideas into practice, with the goal of a new socialist society. The core idea was to remove the brokerage of power, the middlemen. Periyar argued that people didn't need priests or social hierarchies to have value. Self-respect was an inherent right, and his movement was all about empowering people to claim it for themselves. And this was the tool to get it done. For Periyar, rationalism wasn't some abstract philosophical concept you'd read about in a book. It was a weapon. It was the spearhead that could pierce through all the layers of superstition, dogma, and tradition to get to the truth. In his mind, it was the only real path to liberation. All right, this brings us to what is probably the most controversial part of Periyar's entire philosophy: his direct, his relentless, and often shocking confrontation with the very idea of gods and religious belief. You see, he didn't just dismiss the gods, he interrogated them. He basically put the divine on trial, using rationalism to ask the very questions that believers were always told never to ask. So let's listen in on his cross-examination. He just goes after the human-like attributes given to gods, pointing out how absurd it all is. Why would an all-powerful being need golden jewelry or a wife? His underlying question is so sharp. Are these gods truly divine, or are they just projections of our own human greed and earthly desires? And here's his conclusion. After posing all these logical challenges, he just points to the silence. No God answers, no God protests, no God punishes him for his audacity. And for Periyar, that silence was the ultimate proof that the gods people worshipped were either non-existent or just completely irrelevant. This analogy is so powerful, almost crude, and it perfectly sums up his view on religious rituals. He compares the elaborate worship of stone idols to kids playing with mud. In his eyes, it wasn't a spiritual act at all. It was a scheme, orchestrated by the priestly class to exploit the masses and distract them from their real-world problems. But here's the thing, Periyar wasn't just about tearing things down. All of his critiques, all his attacks on caste, religion, and God, they were all in service of building something new. He had a very clear vision for the kind of society he wanted to create. And here it is. It's a vision that's rooted in a simple but really profound humanism. A world without these artificial divisions of high and low. A society free from exploitation, where helping each other and respecting each other are the guiding principles. It's a world where everyone has the freedom to just live. And this really gets to the heart of his vision. For Periyar, true independence wasn't about changing flags or governments. Political freedom meant absolutely nothing if people's minds were still enslaved by blind beliefs. Real freedom had to be social, intellectual, and personal liberation from those ancient structures of control. From diagnosing a society's sickness to prescribing the cure of rationalism, Periyar's ideas cut right to the core of identity, belief, and power. And at the end of the day, these golden sayings are still just as potent and just as provocative today as they were when the government first tried to silence them all those years ago. And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Periyar's work forces us to ask a really fundamental question about the nature of ideas themselves. What is it that makes a thought so powerful that one person sees it as the key to freedom, while another sees it as a threat so dangerous it has to be silenced for decades?